Oh, yeah, Chip's totally leaving. He's going to the Ray. He's going to command Seattle. He got to commit? Well, what's going on in UCLA?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, review. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn, because if there's ever a show to talk about new jobs, it's probably UCLA. Who knows what's going on? But if you want to know what's going on about potential new hires, if you feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business, check out LinkedIn Jobs. Go to linkedinjobs.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Maybe that's what's going on for Chip Kelly, which is obviously where we start. So many things have happened since we last dropped an episode. And is he going? Is he staying? What's he doing? He's obviously out on the recruiting trail, which means he's half recruiting and somewhat throwing his name out there in the ring for NFL offensive coordinating positions. Because last time we talked on this pod, there was clashing information between outlets and understanding, is Chip really going after the Raiders job? Is he after the Commanders job with Dan Quinn getting hired there? And they're all the things that don't exactly involve Chip, with Kliff Kingsbury going to the Raiders, backing out, looking like a Chip option, and then he goes to Dan Quinn where Chip was connected. It's spinning your head. Only for Sunday, we see a boom from Ethan Young tweeted out for 25. And it's actually a pretty good recruit defensively from the linebacking core. Now, I know, yes, we can talk about, was it Chip or is it Ken Norton Jr. who closed the deal, had that relationship? And is it somebody who just wanted to go to UCLA, regardless of the Chip Kelly situation? We'll touch that in a moment. But there's so much wackiness, right, with this situation ongoing for Chip Kelly that they're getting their first 2025 commit for a 24 recruiting class that is much maligned by the fan base, different outlets. Everybody's kind of pointing at, hey, UCLA's 17th in the Big Ten. Remember the Big Ten was just 10 teams, right? Remember when the Pac-10 was 10 teams and the Big 12 was like 12 teams and then 8 teams, and now it's bigger, and the SEC, right? Now there's 18 teams in the Big Ten, more than what UCLA had expected going into Big Ten conference play before Oregon and Washington joined the Leave the Pac-12 train. Now you've got Chip Kelly, who's actively trying to leave, with the rest of the fan base who's clamoring for him to leave. And then all of a sudden you pluck a good recruit defensively, and it just makes you scratch your head. You're like, Weston Port out of San Juan Hills, another San Juan Hills commit to UCLA. It just kind of scratches your head at what's going on. I talked about the buyout situation, how UCLA extended Chip Kelly because they want to give the optics of him staying so they can try and get recruits for 23. But then when things went a little sour last season, this team was like, oh, wait, we just extended him. The UCLA administration is just like, oh, no, can we get rid of him? And then there's the whole talk about, hey, is there enough money to get rid of Chip Kelly because the athletic department deficit? It's different because they're not a private school and they're not across the country when it's just football crazy. We love football. We love a lot of things. It's a little different here in Los Angeles, right, in terms of ponying up in a public school to get rid of Chip Kelly right away, or to pony up to the NIL. That's just not what happens. You can see the difference. That's why there's the big split. Why UCLA, part of the reason, beyond the athletic department deficit, why they're going to the Big Ten. Why Chip Kelly, Mick Cronin are echoing similar sentiments about how the way college athletics is getting splintered apart. The landscape's changing, which Chip Kelly is certainly not designed to succeed in at this current rate with the recruiting, other than the big name recruit they just got in Weston Port, who has been recruited nationally for his inside linebacker ability, his outside linebacker, his edge rushing ability. And he's coming in, right? So you've got a wacky situation where Chip Kelly's staying after the Raiders got a new offensive coordinator after this reported hiring of Kliff Kingsbury went south, and then he goes to Washington to join Dan Quinn. All of a sudden, you've got Deshaun Foster, who's one of the highest assistants, highest ranking, most coveted assistants you could probably have if you're Chip Kelly. He goes to the Raiders to join Antonio Pierce. And then you're just kind of left like, man, what are we doing? It's frustrating. It's a wacky situation to just get compounded by the fact that Weston Port, who was asked specifically by 24/7 Sports' Greg Biggins as when, hey, there's a lot of reasons why I was going to UCLA. They have everything I was looking for in schools, great culture, interesting, great academics, and high-level football. And all the fans want to disagree with those things. But what's interesting is still the Big Ten connection is drawing people to UCLA. There's still a want to go to UCLA. There's a reason. You look at most applied to schools in the country, UCLA is atop the list. So it's not like people don't want to come to the school or want to play in the Rose Bowl, right? Or wherever the UCLA Bruins will play at some distant part of the future. There's still a pull. And even Weston Port, whose lead recruiter, according to the Greg Biggins article, was Ken Norton Jr., who, yes, the NFL experience, how the linebackers have played. He played a role to bringing him in, right? A guy who'll be a approximately four-year starter at San Juan Hills. And he was even asked, like, hey, yeah, Chip Kelly, I'd obviously like to play for Chip, but UCLA as a program was a draw for me. So is UCLA more of a draw than we expect? Absolutely. Is it less of a draw than, say, other places in the country when you're looking at, the ACCs, the other Big Ten schools, the other SEC schools? And he can be like, yeah, but there's still ways to draw recruits. And it's just so intriguing that for UCLA to get somebody who just had 13 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, 3 picks, who was an edge rusher in his freshman year, then became a linebacker, has a way and a diverse ability, right? His ability to be in different spots is important for UCLA to get this recruit in Weston Port. It just comes at a chaotic time for UCLA football where it's just Chip Kelly. Is he staying? Is he going? Nobody wants Chip Kelly to stay, it seems like, other than the most important people at UCLA in the athletic department. And whether that's Martin Germond or not, right? Because with Gene Block, all the talk about him, with the administration, key donors, it just seems like everything's not lining up. And yet, despite all the agenda pushing by myself included, here they are getting a top recruit in 25, trying to reset the narrative heading into Big Ten play. And obviously, with how quickly everything changes in this Big Ten landscape and the college football landscape with the portal, the coaching searches, and then the portal opens again for the players who lost their coaches. It's just a wild, wacky world we live in where commitments are tough to come by. And then they go on the portal and they come back to recommit to their new coach only for another coach to pull an old commitment from an old school. It's a funny time to live, right? So the Bruins got a great recruit in Weston Port. We should be excited about that in 25. Now there's still a full near year plus before he even enters into a UCLA football game, if that still becomes the situation, whether he signs, sticks with his signing, if UCLA still has Chip Kelly, if that changed Port's mind. But from what he said, he's clearly committed to UCLA beyond Chip Kelly. And from what his comments say in this article, 24/7 Sports, hey, I'm here for UCLA, which is still a draw, which hopefully, despite all the smoke and mirrors and everything, the rain, everything seems like it's just pouring, literally cats and dogs right now, as it might be wherever you are if you're in Southern California right now, right? Or in crazy weather. There's still a way to try and flip the narrative, hopefully moving forward. Now it's going to start with some recruiting wins, maybe not many in 24, but the more you get in 25 and build for that next recruiting class, then maybe UCLA can set themselves up for success, even if Chip Kelly and the fan base are both actively shopping for the replacement or the next job. It's a funny time. This is a weird, wacky time to be a UCLA football fan. It's just, is he going to be a coach in the NFL? Is he not going to coach again? At this point, I believe Chip Kelly is going to coach the entire 2024 regular season for UCLA. That is my thoughts. That is my prediction right now. Now, will he be bought out? Will he leave? Will he leave on his own accord? Of course, I'm getting choked up in this situation. That is to be seen. At this point, the carousel is just going again and again and again. Let's just get wacky. Let's find something outside the box and see if it works. Because Chip Kelly, whatever we're doing, loving, hating him isn't working for him in his recruiting cycle and for what UCLA is doing as a fan base. We got to find somewhere in the middle to make it work. Speaking of making it work, Mick Cronin, has made it work. Let's talk about that next on Locked On UCLA because, man, this is a completely different team than the one that got embarrassed in Salt Lake City. All right, whether you're hiring for your small business or looking for a new job like Chip Kelly and UCLA are all trying to figure out right now, you're going to want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And we're not debating anything football-wise right now because you need, for your small business, to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the right tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Because it's not just another job board, right? There's so many of those job boards. It's a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. You sit there and you're like, man, I could connect with this big name right here and get connected. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And that's all why it makes the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have so many quality candidates, many on LinkedIn. So when 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours, one would think that's the way to go because LinkedIn Jobs knows that small businesses, you're wearing so many hats and might have the resources to hire. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. So it's been a couple weeks now. Now we've moved into the month of February. Some might be getting geared up for the big game. I particularly don't care about the 2 participants or even worried about if T-Swizzle will make it. Not even amongst my thoughts. We're going to get mad in a month and a half before we get mad in March, baby. Hopefully a good type of mad. Because right now, UCLA is on a heater. They are ready to go in everything right now with what Mick Cronin has somewhat turned around this team to be as UCLA is taking on a new role, a new identity in this recent surge where they've now found ways to win at Arizona State. They're able to sweep the Oregon schools, and they've continued to be successful in ways that we didn't think this team could be, right? This is a team that, despite all the things that have gone wrong, injuries, lack of production, everything that this team could have been counted out from, yet here they are with a 71-63 sweep of the Oregon schools. By identical scores, 71-63, the Bruins beat Oregon State and Oregon. And remember, UCLA had already beaten Oregon State. Then Oregon State got hot, beat the Arizona schools. The Bruins, against a much better Oregon State team and a much better UCLA team, played I think to be a better game quality-wise than what was won at the end of December. And now here we are in February. Then you play Oregon, right? UCLA struggled with the pressure. It was like, all right, we're here. We're kind of scrapping and clawing. They didn't even have N'Faly Dante. And yet the Bruins found a way to almost win that game, and yet they still lost. Here we are now for UCLA. They get to play this Oregon team again at home, a crowd that was loud. You could feel the energy in the arena. We're wanting to support this team that is super exciting and completely different than what they were a few weeks ago. And here they were with a Dembona in foul trouble against N'Faly Dante, who did not play terribly. 16 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block. That's the beast that did not play the first time. That is one of the missing components to an Oregon team that has been more injury-riddled than UCLA has been at times this year. And here Dante was inflicting some pain. You had Jadion Tracy, who came in 15 points and a couple of threes. But the difference is the Bruins didn't let Shellstad beat him from deep. Couisnard was not hitting his shots. And yes, you could point to the fact that they were stuck in some presidential traffic. And as many LA people would tell Oregon and their fans, hey, that's just a regular Tuesday night in LA. Whether there's a president here or not, it can be brutal. I'm not sure how far they're staying away from Pauley Pavilion, but to get stuck and delay the game by near half an hour, that is some royally bad traffic to get stuck, right? That is some terrible traffic. But what are the things that stuck out for this UCLA team that Mick Cronin has really adjusted, right? There are moments in this game where they blitz the Ducks. They're up 18, and then they're down by 1 at halftime. And they come back, they take the lead, only for Oregon to come back and make it a game late after the Bruins scored on themselves, literally. And then the Bruins closed the gap and won this game by 8. most importantly, the trap that Oregon employed, like a 3/4 court press coming in, the Bruins sometimes struggling to get the ball across half court, near deflections, near steals. Overall, UCLA only turned it over 7 times. 7 times the Bruins turned it over. The first time they turned over 15, 16 times. So a clear adjustment to the game plan, more confidence bringing up the ball by Dylan Andrews, Sebastian Mack, and any of the guards who had to help push the ball. Lazar Stefanovic, who comes over. The Bruins found ways to move the basketball without turning it over. That's one. The emphasis on rebounding. Mick Cronin talked about this postgame. You get more rebounds, you turn it over less, you're going to have more chances to shoot the basketball. Well, yes, ding, ding, ding. That's a good observation from anybody who can watch the game. Of course, Mick Cronin saying that that's what he's wanting his team to do. But most importantly, they're more confident shooting the basketball. This was a game where the Bruins could barely crack 60 the first time. And here they were easily, in my opinion, maybe not easily, but they cracked 70. A team that could barely score 50 points. An ugly, woeful offense to watch. And now they're free-flowing. They're passing it around. UCLA in this game got to the line 17 times, converted 76% of the time, hit 6 threes on a 50% clip, and shot nearly 45% in a game where Adem Bona was practically a non-factor. It's one thing if you're shooting 50%, all the points are going to Bona. He's 20-10, and he's just dunking it on Dante 10 times. That's not what happened. UCLA baited or used the lack of aggressiveness from the hedge on a pick and roll from Dante as he would go back. Notably, you look at the film, UCLA hadn't been hitting jump shots. Unless you watch the last couple of games, the confident shooting the ball. Dylan Andrews specifically. You'll see in the LA Times that Ben Bolch just wrote something about Dylan Andrews. You can see different videos about how the impact of Andrews' confidence has been important. 20 points against USC, another equally solid performance against Oregon State. And the guy Mick Cronin needed arguably to step up the most. Arguably. This whole season, right? For this season to be a successful year, you needed impact from the freshmen. They've gotten that in waves, but as Mick Cronin say, young players, they can struggle sometimes. Bona still has his struggles, but he's been very good when he is on the court, not in foul trouble. But the one player that Cronin is asking of the most, besides Stefanovic, who plays like 90 minutes a game in a 40-minute game, besides Stefanovic literally never leaving the court, the guy that's being asked the most is Dylan Andrews. And in the beginning, it didn't always work out. It was, all right, he can play the minutes, and then you got to play the facilitator. And then he could kind of score, and then everything kind of went haywire. Mixture between cramping, the inability to hit the jump shot, then some turnovers. It was always something. But now that he's put it all together, the ability to use his athleticism to get an open shot, hit the open shot, find the open player with his 7 assists and 21 points. And how many turnovers? Only 2. And you can live with that if you're playing 40 minutes like Andrews was, shooting better than 50%. And I think from early on in the beginning of the season, it was clear that his mid-range jump shot is his bread and butter. From the side of the court, the sideline mid-range was something he was showcasing in Hawaii. Now making those extended elbow jump shots, pulling up and hitting in the face of the defense, or just the inside the paint jumper, about 10, 15 feet out, 5 feet out, that has been key. But the addition of him making 2 of 3, or those 3 threes, and when UCLA was losing games by 4, 5, 6, 9, and you see that increase in scoring and efficiency from Dylan Andrews, that has been imperative to the UCLA success. Just that growth alone from Andrews. And that's not even the rest of the roster, right? Andrews alone has been significant to their success. You add in Stefanovic. When the Bruins have Stefanovic, even if he didn't shoot that well, which he didn't necessarily do against Oregon, but the rebounding, his 10 boards, 15 and 10, huge. When the Bruins have Stefanovic score 15, you're not going to find them losing many games. His reversal, his in-season, almost 2-day change to go to the Washington game after the Utah game, change his confidence and his shooting stroke. I mean, not change his shooting stroke physically, but just the ability to knock it down, shoot it with confidence, and even on a bad shooting night, to go out there and get boards, get points, which UCLA desperately needs. Even on their worst of nights, UCLA needs scoring. The defense is generally there. Because sometimes you do need to win a game 70-60 and not 50-40 like it's years and years ago. It's great to see Stefanovic. If he's scoring 15, hardly a chance you're going to see UCLA losing unless there are mop-up points. And Stefanovic just not score mop-up points. He'll get in there and hit his threes. Andrews is progression. The ability for Sebastian Mack to be effective. If Mack gets to the line 8 times, 10 times, UCLA is going to score a lot of points, especially if he's knocking down those free throws, even though he's a little bugged with a bit of a foot injury, I believe a toe injury from what I've read. His ability to do that, that's just the guard play. And I think what's also been important, as Berke reacclimates himself, gets acclimated to the lineup again after going out with injury and being banged up, because you only play one game against USC that week long. It's been a couple weeks since he's played fuller games. You're not getting a lot of successful nights from Berke just yet. We saw how dangerous he can be when he's feeling confident shooting jump shots. Mata taking those minutes from Nuba has been important. Because I'm not sure why the Bruins couldn't find the lob potential tomorrow, but just the growth and those couple of possessions. What is key the last couple of Saturday victories for UCLA? Mata being in the game during a 9-0 run against Oregon when Bona couldn't play, when they were protecting Bona against USC so we wouldn't get in early foul trouble. It was Mata, and alongside Devin Williams that time, keying a big run when the Bruins were down 7 to put themselves up 8. So twice Mata has been in the last 3 games, been an integral part of big minutes. Even if he's only playing 13 and scoring 4 points, those couple of lobs are possessions the Bruins would normally go empty on. And then with the team that struggles to score, as UCLA has been, those 4 points can make a huge difference. Look at how many games the Bruins lost close, right? The uptick by Stefanovic scoring, the efficiency from Andrews, those couple of easy points when Bona's off the floor that are going to Mata, and him showcasing his size, getting those couple of rebounds. That all adds up to a team that is playing together that doesn't necessarily have a superstar, but is turning into a well-oiled machine as opposed to a cataclysmic disaster that it looked like in Utah. That was awful. That's not what this team is at this juncture. And they have a whole month and a half before Selection Sunday to build their resume, although I'm not entirely sure the resume will matter much. It's building and growing for 1 week in Vegas. And to hear their name on Selection Sunday, it's how well they position themselves in the standings, seedings-wise, and how ready they are to go win 3 or 4 games in as many nights to get to the tournament. Because this is a team that's showcasing the potential to do that with their confidence. Now, can they do that over an extended period of time? This is a 2-3 week stretch. Do it over a month. This looks like that team from 2019-2020 because Mick Cronin's flipped it. Defensively, a little more efficient. Offensively is where the game has changed. Confidence has grown immensely. Big time stuff for Mick Cronin and company. Now we move on to UCLA women's basketball because, hey, we've got an update somewhat on Lauren Betts. And how did this team play against one of the best teams in the country in their own conference? Only time they played in the regular season, and against Cal, who had been flirting with NCAA tournament bubble potential earlier in this season. How the Bruins do with a roster that has been decimated between injury, illness, and national team ties with players leaving for those, right, to qualify for the Olympics. Everything blowing your mind. Let's talk about this UCLA women's team next on Locked On UCLA. All right, it's the week of the big game, and there's one place you need to go. It's FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because if you're like me, big game, Super Bowl Sunday, it's all about scoring, the best seats on the couch. You sit there like, got my snacks. Check. Yum, yum, yum. I'm a wingman. Maybe, bum, 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 bum. Anything chicken, let's roll. But what you need is to grab your favorite super bets. Because all you got to do, if you want to end the season with a W or 2 or 3, when you're watching Super Bowl 58, is maybe you want to bet on who's going to win. Who or how many players will score a touchdown? How many points will be scored? And so much more. Which is why if you're a new customer, join today. Right now, you're listening, you're watching, join today. $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's a lot. Go check it out. FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. We're wrapping things up today talking to women's hoops because this is a team that I think is clearly at full health, at full strength, minus Emily Bissoir, who's been out for a long time and is out for the year, is a short list national championship contender. Number 2, number 3, whatever number you want to be for a team that's currently number 9 in the nation. Fell a couple of spots after what they deemed somewhat of it. Cori Close, after the game, emotional in a different way, very emphatic in her team's lack of, I believe what she said, character, toughness. I'm going to say tenacity. That's not a word she used. In their 20-point loss against Stanford that came 2 days after their 20-point win at Cal, right? So what was overshadowed UCLA's win against Cal with, again, no Lauren Betts, who before the weekend was clarified to be out from the Bay Area weekend games, and we all wanted to see Cameron Brink take on Lauren Betts against her former school, and would have pitted what UCLA was missing last year versus what they are missing this year and what is a big part of their success. The Bruins went out against Cal, another dominant first quarter. When UCLA is rolling and they're playing teams that they're clearly better than, they come out in the first quarter and dominate. And I've been asking for Charisma Osborne to step up. She has been and scored 32 against Cal on like 70% shooting or something close to that, right? Exactly. Hit a couple of threes, 4 assists, 0 turnovers. Osborne played as nearly perfect of a game against Cal on the Friday nights as she could have been. 78-58 UCLA win at Haas Pavilion, where the Bruins saw Osborne dominate. And then you saw another pure shooting performance by Jones, 18 points, hit 4 threes, pure. Dugalich comes out. She's expected to be missing games coming up soon for national team duties. She scored 12. And then generally, there is not a lot much else from UCLA scoring the basketball-wise. And yet they got the job done. They won and earned the job. Even with a very quiet weekend, and that game specifically from Kiki Rice, who had no made field goals, 2 points, 4 turnovers. That's with your most dynamic, arguably most improved player on the roster doing nothing against Cal. The Bruins won by 20 on the road. If Osborne had done that a night earlier on a Thursday, you would have seen more national media. You would have seen more talk about what Osborne was doing. It just unfortunately came the same night that the sensation that Juju Watkins goes over and tortures Stanford, nearly outscores herself, the Cardinal, and USC upset the Cardinal at Stanford at the Farm. And then the Bruins had to go play them 2 nights later. They saw Osborne get hot in the first quarter again, like 13 points, first quarter and a half, and Stanford said, no, we're not messing around. They lost at home. They're angry. They saw Juju Watkins score 50 on them and nearly outscored their entire team. That was an angry team against a shorthanded UCLA team where Stanford is really good at where UCLA is currently lacking some depth in the post, where the Bruins are missing, I believe, Zontag. Beswar's out for the year. You're missing Betts. They were missing a lot of interior strength in that game, and that's what it said for himself. But first, Osborne's performance against Cal, if it's on a different night, gets a lot of love. She shot 70%, scored 32 on the road, and the Bruins beat Cal. Cal's not a terrible team. They're a scrappy team, a team that if you don't show up, especially when you're playing on their home floor, they'll beat you. They'll beat you. And the Bruins didn't let that happen. They were solid. They played a pretty clean game, and it was the Osborne takeover show, mixing a couple of London Jones threes. And the Bruins slowly, as the game went on, pulled away and put that game away to bed like they normally have been throughout the season. Now, against Stanford, you're like, okay, the Bruins trying as hard as they possibly can, and they're down 9. And then you blink, and all of a sudden they're down 30. And UCLA couldn't do anything to keep this game close. Not one bit. Osborne started off with like 13 points in the first 15 minutes, and then Stanford said, we're not. They clearly said this. This was probably the worst possible time to play Stanford, right? It would have been probably better for UCLA to go up there on a Friday night and catch them sleeping and beat them then, as opposed to going out, beating Cal. You've got an angry Stanford team after their loss to SC, and then they come out on national television and want to not just one, embarrass UCLA, come out 2, because they're only meeting in the regular season. This is the maybe clearest threat besides Colorado to win the Pac-12 standings-wise, pushed them further down the standings. Cameron Brink came out and had 19 and 19. Initially, I thought she had 19 and 20, 19 points, 20 rebounds, but 19 points, 19 rebounds, 7 blocks. And where did UCLA struggle against South Carolina and Stanford the previous year when they went a combined 1-4 against those teams? When it was Aaliyah Boston and Brink doing the same thing, UCLA didn't have that interior presence, which the absence of Lauren Betts was felt even more. The Bruins only having 8 players available truly to suit up for this game. No Zontag in this game. And yet, what Cori Close said after the game was rather compelling. Even with Lauren Betts, the issues that are there on the court were not going to be fixed with her on the court. Now, we could all take different opinions, and the feeling going into that game was, it's going to be a little tough to beat Stanford. Extremely tougher to beat them on their home floor with an expected good crowd, which is rare to get at Stanford in almost all their sports, but a good crowd with UCLA coming to town. And they're angry after their last performance with UCLA struggling without Lauren Betts and already shorthanded significantly. And the fact that she said even with Lauren Betts, they wouldn't have fixed things. It was a lack of competitiveness, the character of the team she questioned. For a team that shot under 30% from the floor, had a lot of shots swatted away, right? You can get nightmares of what Boston and the Gamecocks were doing to the Bruins last year in the Sweet 16 in that game in Columbia. And then Cameron Brink somewhat doing similar things to what she did to the Bruins in last year before UCLA was able to knock them off in Vegas with a big comeback effort. But it was just a little too much to ask for this UCLA team that slid down to 9th after their loss, just on the fringe of the top 10, to stay in it at the Farm to win this game. I think they can beat Stanford at full strength. I do think this team can do so. And when is the bigger question, this team going to be at full strength? When are the Bruins going to? Well, Close did mention she expects, I'd said this in the presser, she expects Betts to be back with them. Now there's no further update as to what is going on officially, other than it's a somewhat day-to-day status, and that Betts is expected to play again from her head coach herself. Now, that could be different. Sometimes coaches, they're not doctors. They want to instill positivity, but one would think that after that game, a week after being emotional in a sadder sense and prouder of her team's effort against Washington State versus against Stanford, the frustration she voiced, it is important to note that Betts is expected via her head coach to come back, which is hopefully a good sign that the situation isn't that bad, but at an appropriate time. I wonder, we're just kind of left in the dark here as to what's going on. But I think the biggest quote from Close, even that she said Betts is expected back, even with her, the things shown on that floor against Stanford were not going to change things, even if Betts was inserted in the lineup. I might disagree a little bit there with a fully healthy lineup, but still, if she feels like her team was not ready, then there's still things to go. They can be a little bit better at taking care of the basketball. Overall, UCLA, they're good. They forced 17 turnovers. Stanford still forced it 17 times, but it's the aggression in the paint, not having the fear, right? Stanford had 10 blocks, UCLA had 0. So it's who's going to assert the physicality and the moxie in the paint, get the rebounds, and not be afraid to go in and score those points in the paint. UCLA against the Cardinal, 12 points in the paint, that's not going to cut it. UCLA's bread and butter is inside outs. And whether they got to do motions, go backdoor cuts, completely fix what they're doing offensively to find an offensive identity that at the moment without Betts, without Duga Leach, who's going to be on national team duties, without Zontag, without all these players, they have to find a way to score in the paint. Because they can try and live and die by the three. That's just not going to beat the best of teams unless you're literally shooting Caitlin Clark level 3-point percentages, which is like the best scorer almost ever in the college game. So if they can find a way to score in the paint and then complement that with some Jones shooting, complement that with Charisma Osborne, and hopefully after a couple of rough games from Kiki Rice, where she went a combined 3 for 17 in the road trip with 13 points in 2 games, that is a key. When you're Energizer Bunny, Osborne is the leader, right? You've got Cam Brown, who's the leader, but the player that can help make this go again is Kiki Rice. And she had a quiet week in the Bay Area. That is someone to look forward to. I'm not sure if Close was indirectly trying to single out a player. I can't say that specifically, but the one who needs to get the engine going, Osborne did all she could. I've even asked for her to step up. She's done that. It's Kiki Rice now. It's her turn to help as a point guard, someone who brings the ball up, to be aggressive in transition, all these things together to help lead this team to victory until they get full strength and hopefully, eventually, probably beat Stanford again in the Pac-12 tournament for the final time ever. All right. So this team's still a top 10 team. They've beaten 6 top 25 teams. Half of the top 10, basically, the Bruins have taken down. And yet, they're so close. They're so close. Hopefully, full health gets there and they get better. And they get that character and that moxie that Cori Close is looking for. We'll talk about that more next. All on Locked On UCLA. Recruiting in 25 has begun. Men's basketball, women's basketball, and softball starting. We'll talk about that, all that next on Locked On UCLA. Stay tuned as we get your hands up for an 8 clap, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.